They didn't ghost you. They didn't forget about you. And this silence, it's not the end. When twin flames stop talking to each other, the pain can feel unbearable. It's like being cut off from your own soul. But what if I told you that this silence is not rejection, it's redirection? That it's not abandonment, it's awakening. The truth is, something powerful is unfolding behind the quiet, something sacred. If they've pulled away, if the messages suddenly stopped, if you're staring at your phone, wondering what went wrong, this video is exactly what your soul needs to hear right now. Because this isn't about the words that were left unsaid. It's about the energy you're both learning to hold. Stay with me until the end. And if you've ever felt this silence, write, "I feel it too," in the comments. You are not alone in this. Never. It's not just silence. It's a spiritual echo, a deep ache that reaches into the soul and shakes everything. When twin flames stop talking, it doesn't feel like a breakup. It feels like something inside you went quiet too. The connection doesn't disappear, but the human experience of it suddenly vanishes. No calls, no texts, just silence. Deafening, sacred, confusing silence. This moment, although it feels like loss, is actually part of a divine reset. The universe, your soul, and theirs, they're rearranging something big. And while the mind might scream for answers, the silence is where the soul whispers truth. Why does it hurt so much? Because the bond is still there. And when you feel so connected but can't reach out, the absence feels louder than presence ever did. But here's something most don't realize. This phase is not punishment, it's preparation. The energy between you both is recalibrating, and to do that, space is necessary. The divine masculine, often the one to go quiet, doesn't always understand what he's feeling. The intensity, the mirror, the depth, it's overwhelming. So his silence is not always rejection, it's survival. And the divine feminine, she feels everything, the pull, the ache, the longing. But instead of chasing, she's being called to rise, to anchor, to become the lighthouse in this storm of soul lessons. What if this silence is the exact thing needed to bring you both home to yourselves before you come home to each other? What if the pain is actually making space for clarity, maturity, healing? In this phase, you're not losing them. You're being given the gift of inner alignment. If you're in this silence now, ask yourself, not why are they gone, but what is this teaching me? Let the silence speak. Let it reveal. Let it transform you. And remember, just because you can't hear them doesn't mean your souls aren't still speaking every single day. What silence actually means energetically. When a twin flame connection enters silence, it's not just a lack of communication, it's an energetic recalibration. On the surface, it feels like abandonment, rejection, or confusion. But underneath, something much deeper is happening. Both souls are being pulled inward for profound inner work. This silence isn't emptiness, it's initiation. Energetically, silence acts like a sacred void. It's a pause created by the universe, often not by choice, but by necessity. Both counterparts are being held in separate energetic containers, not to be torn apart, but to be rewired, realigned, and reawakened. Think of it as the space between breaths. It's where the next inhale is born. The soul craves union, but the ego isn't always ready. Silence shows up when the energy between twin flames becomes too charged, too unbalanced, or too triggering. It's the universe saying, you both need to stabilize on your own, or this connection will implode under the weight of unhealed patterns. So what does this mean in practical, energetic terms? The masculine energy often withdraws to process overwhelming feelings that it can't yet name. He's not just not ready, he's being pushed into an inner cave where shadow work begins. His silence is the sound of his soul being stretched. The feminine energy, on the other hand, is invited to feel everything that rises in that silence. The longing, the abandonment wounds, the fear, and transmute it into wisdom. She becomes the alchemist. Her emotional world becomes the terrain where union is first built, energetically. Have you ever felt like, even in silence, you could still feel their presence? That's because silence doesn't mean disconnection. In fact, sometimes the connection gets louder, psychically, telepathically, energetically. Your souls never stop speaking. It's your minds and emotions that get caught in the noise of the silence. So what is silence really doing? It's stripping away codependency. It's exposing attachment wounds. It's revealing where love was still conditional. It's helping you both become the highest version of yourselves, the ones that can hold the frequency of true divine union. And here's the truth most people miss. When you stop chasing the silence, it starts to speak back. When you sit with the discomfort instead of trying to fix it, clarity arrives. Growth accelerates. Healing unfolds. So don't rush to end the silence. Honor it. Ask what it's trying to show you. Feel what's rising inside you. This isn't the end. It's the sacred middle. And sometime, the silence is where the reunion begins. In every twin flame connection, there comes a moment when something deep gets activated. a wound, a fear, a memory, and suddenly the energy shifts. The connection that once felt magnetic now feels unstable, even unbearable. This is when disconnection happens. But it's not random, it's triggered. So what are these triggers that cause one or both of you to pull away? Often, it begins with abandonment or rejection wounds rising to the surface. One person says or does something that unconsciously taps into an old pain, maybe from childhood, maybe from past relationships, maybe even from past lives, and the reaction is instant. The nervous system goes into fight, flight, freeze, or silence. The feminine may feel unseen or unchosen, which activates deep core beliefs like, I'm not enough, or love always leaves. The masculine may feel pressured, overwhelmed, or judged, which touches his fear of failure, of not being able to hold the connection, of losing his sense of autonomy. Neither one is trying to hurt the other. They're trying to protect themselves from a pain they didn't know was still there. Have you ever asked yourself, why did they shut down after we got so close? Or, why do I suddenly feel the urge to run, even when I love them deeply? These are signs that the connection has hit an energetic mirror. It's reflecting your deepest shadows back to you, not to punish, but to awaken. The intensity of the twin flame bond acts like a spotlight, illuminating everything that's not yet healed. And when the light gets too bright, the first instinct is often to retreat. Other common triggers include fear of vulnerability. Getting too emotionally naked can feel terrifying when your soul remembers past betrayals. Fear of loss of control. The connection can make you feel out of control, destabilized, especially if you've spent your life keeping things together. Unhealed trauma. Childhood patterns of not feeling safe, not being loved unconditionally, or not being able to trust anyone often get projected onto the twin flame. Timing. When one of you is still entangled in karmic cycles, relationships, beliefs, or environments that are no longer aligned, the soul knows it's not the moment for full union. But here's the spiritual twist. These triggers are not obstacles. They're portals. They appear not to tear you apart, but to show you what still needs healing, so you can eventually come back together in truth. The disconnection isn't a failure, it's a detox, a soul-level clearing. It's how the universe helps both of you shed illusions so that when union happens, it's clean, it's real, it's divine. So if you're in the space where it feels like everything is falling apart, breathe. You're not broken, you're becoming whole. And even in disconnection, the journey is still working for you. How the masculine and feminine experience this differently. When the silence falls between twin flames, it doesn't fall equally. The masculine and feminine energies, whether embodied in man or woman, experience this energetic rupture in profoundly different ways, not because one suffers more than the other, but because their inner worlds are wired for very different soul lessons. And understanding this difference is often what opens the door to healing, reunion, and deeper compassion. Let's begin with the feminine. The divine feminine energy is the heart. Intuitive, emotional, expansive. When separation or silence happens, she tends to feel everything. Her emotions become louder. She may cry, ache, overthink, or go deep into self-reflection. She often blames herself, wondering what she did wrong, what she missed, or how she could fix it. Her pain is raw because for her, the connection was sacred from the start. She recognized the bond instantly, not with logic, but with her soul. But here's the thing, this emotional intensity is not a weakness. It's her superpower. It's through feeling that she purges, expands, and anchors unconditional love into the connection. Even when she feels abandoned, her soul is doing deep energetic work, clearing timelines, sending light, holding space. Her journey is one of surrender, letting go of control, letting go of chasing, and trusting that her magnetic energy is already calling the masculine home. And what about the masculine? The divine masculine energy is the container, grounded, action-oriented, logical. When silence hits, his instinct is often to pull away, not to punish, but to process. He doesn't always know how to handle the depth of what he feels. Sometimes, he doesn't even understand why he's feeling it. So instead of going inward emotionally like the feminine, he may try to distract himself with work, with logic, with other relationships, or even with complete detachment. But this isn't because he doesn't care. In fact, the silence often hits him just as hard. He just doesn't have the emotional tools to name it. His soul is going through a restructuring. The love cracked him open, and now his old identity, the one built on control, avoidance, and independence, is dissolving. That's terrifying, so he runs, he hides, he disconnects. But it's not forever. His path is one of awakening, learning to feel, to be vulnerable, and to hold space for the feminine the way she's held space for him. Have you ever felt like you were grieving while they seemed fine? Or wondered if they even feel the same depth you do? They do, just differently. And often what you see on the surface is the opposite of what's happening inside. The feminine looks expressive, but is learning to rest. The masculine looks cold, but secretly being unraveled by the intensity of love. This silence is not punishment. It's not rejection. It's a divine recalibration. And when both energies begin to understand each other, when the feminine stops trying to fix and the masculine stops trying to run, a new harmony becomes possible. A silent harmony at first, but one that's leading back to union. What to do when you're in this phase? When you're deep in the silence between you and your twin flame, it can feel like the loudest heartbreak you've ever experienced. No words, no updates, no closure, just space. But this silence isn't empty. It's full of transformation. What you do during this phase can shift everything. It's not about fixing or chasing. It's about rising into the version of you that the union is already calling forward. So, what now? The first thing is this. Stop seeing the silence as punishment. It's not rejection. It's redirection. A divine pause meant to realign the both of you, not just emotionally, but energetically, spiritually, and sometimes even physically. If your connection has hit this wall, it's because the old dynamics couldn't carry the new level of love that's trying to come through. So the universe hit pause, not to take love away, but to deepen it. This is the moment to turn inward, not outward. You might be tempted to send one more message, to try to explain what they might be misunderstanding, to reread old texts and ask yourself 100 times, where did it go wrong? But here's the truth. This phase isn't about them. It's about you, your alignment, your expansion, your healing. Because when you heal, you shift the entire field between you. Ask yourself, what part of me feels abandoned in this silence? What wound is being activated? And how long have I carried it, even before them? Your answers won't always be pretty. This journey is raw, but it's also holy. Now is the time to do the soul work, not because doing so will make them come back, but because this is the version of you that love is destined for. Work with your energy. Heal your inner child. Release codependency. Return to your truth. And most importantly, reconnect to you, your body, your heart, your joy. The you that existed before longing took over. Use this silence as sacred space. Meditate not just to calm your mind, but to hear your own soul again. Create art, write, move your body, not as a distraction, but as expression. Let your divine essence expand beyond the storyline. You may not control the timing of reunion, but you do control your frequency, and your frequency is what your twin flame feels across the veil. If you stay in desperation, they feel it. If you rise into embodiment, they feel that too. The journey of union is not about waiting, it's about becoming. So, if you're in this phase now, breathe. You're not being left behind. You're being asked to meet yourself fully, maybe for the first time. And from that place, reunion stops being a goal and becomes a natural result. Let me ask you something. What are you discovering about you in this silence? And how would your energy shift if you trusted that love was already finding its way back? Let's talk in the comments below. You're not alone, and this phase won't last forever. There comes a moment on the twin flame journey, often when you least expect it, where the energy begins to shift. Not because one of you sends a message, or because something suddenly clicks in the 3D, but because something profound shifts within. This is the turning point, the moment when everything that once felt stuck starts to melt, realign, and move again, quietly, energetically, powerfully. But let's be honest, this moment isn't usually loud or obvious. In fact, most twin flames don't realize they've hit the turning point until they look back and say, that was when things began to change. So how do you know you're in it now? It begins with peace, not the kind that comes from circumstances, but the kind that comes from surrender. You're no longer grasping for answers, obsessively searching for signs, or waiting for a message that proves it's real. Instead, you start feeling an internal calm, as if your soul has exhaled. You realize the journey never depended on them changing. It always depended on you remembering who you are. You stop asking why they ran and start asking why you kept chasing. You stop defining love by the way it looks and start tuning into how it feels. You stop fearing the silence and start listening to what it's here to teach you. This is when the energy between you begins to reorganize. The cords of attachment dissolve and the soul bond strengthens. Because you're no longer relating to them from fear, desperation, or lack, but from your essence. And that frequency, that's what calls them home. Can you feel that shift? Have you noticed moments where you're no longer triggered by their absence, but curious about your own growth? Are you finding joy again in ways that don't revolve around the relationship? That's the energy of reunion, not in theory, but in motion. This turning point doesn't always mean they return tomorrow. Sometimes the universe still needs to rearrange pieces behind the scenes. But from an energetic perspective, The reunion begins the moment you align with your soul truth. The second you let go of the version of them you were holding on to and allow the real one to emerge, free of projections, fears, or conditions. Here's the most powerful secret. Union doesn't start with a message. It starts with mirroring. When you come home to yourself, they begin to feel the pull to come home too, not out of obligation, but out of resonance. Your healing becomes the invitation their soul can't ignore. So if you've felt something shift lately, a softness, a clarity, a deep inner knowing, you might already be in it. The turning point. Now let it unfold. No forcing, no waiting, just becoming. Your energy speaks louder than words. And in this journey, it's your alignment that writes the love story. Let me ask you this. What part of you has finally stopped fighting and started flowing? And if you knew reunion was already in motion, how would you show up today? I'd love to hear your heart in the comments. This journey is sacred, and you're walking it beautifully. If you've made it this far, you already know the twin flame journey isn't about chasing someone. It's about becoming someone. And as you step out of the silence, out of the cycles, and into your true self, something begins to shed on a deeper level. But where do you go from here? What's next when you've done so much inner work? When you've cried, purged, awakened, surrendered? The next step is this: integration. You've seen the patterns. You've felt the pull. You've faced the shadows. Now it's time to live from your light, to let your healing ripple into the way you speak, love, move, and create. This is the part of the journey where your inner work becomes embodied truth, where you no longer practice self-worth. You are self-worth. Where love is no longer a concept, it's your natural state. That means creating from a place of overflow, not emptiness. It means setting boundaries without guilt. It means allowing joy in now, not just when they return. Because whether your twin flame is physically with you or not, you're already in union when your soul is no longer split. And the more you anchor into that truth, the more magnetic you become. So what can you do in this phase? Keep choosing alignment over attachment. Keep tuning into your intuition instead of your fears. Keep honoring your journey instead of comparing it. Start asking deeper questions. What lights me up even when I'm alone? How can I serve others through what I've learned? What version of me would union naturally flow to? The twin flame path is spiritual mastery in disguise. It teaches you to be still in the unknown, to love through the pain, to trust the timing of your soul. So if you're here wondering, what now? The answer is, you rise. You rise into your mission. You rise into your truth. You rise into the version of you who doesn't just wait for love, but radiates it. And as you do, they feel it, always. Because even when you're apart in the physical, you're never disconnected energetically. That bond is still pulsing, still evolving, still preparing both of you for the version of love that doesn't just survive, it transforms everything. So take the next step, not by doing more, but by being more of who you really are. Trust the path, trust the process, and most of all, trust yourself. Union begins within, and from there, the universe handles the rest. Let your next chapter be guided by soul, not fear. And if this message touched your heart today, drop A in the comments so we know you're walking this path with us. Your journey matters, and you're exactly where you're meant to be.